Hello. Just thought I'd make a quicker video today. Something a little bit different. Something that's almost like a technical video for people that want to record their own music. It's not going to be a best of. It's not going to be the 5 best whatevers. It's not going to be the worst mistakes made by artists and recording artists and writers. It's just a personal view on essentially monitoring, and how you might use those in a recording and mixing situation. And it's just my own personal experience with these things. So just to wind back a little bit, so when I set up this small studio, this sort of version 5 I think we're on now, I upgraded as much as I could without spending too much money. So I got a lot of second-hand stuff. I got an Impulse 49 that was used. I got a second-hand iMac to the level that I felt I needed, and expanded it to run the software that I knew I wanted, and the software that I knew I wanted from years of running Cubase and dabbling around with Pro Tools, and realizing that actually to go the Pro Tools route was going to be too expensive. And because I'm both a Mac and a Windows user, I don't have any great feelings or affinity with either. They're just tools that I use. They can both be a bit silly, and they can both work damn well. So you pick and choose. So anyway, I ended up using Logic Pro X because it was a fantastic price. It's a brilliant piece of software, and that was going to be the hub, the basis of my my recording. Now, I got all the bits and pieces together, and I bought some KRK Rocket, I think there were 3s or 5s, RP5s maybe, monitors. And I've mentioned this in another video, but they're powered monitors, and they had decent reviews. They were popular. They were black and yellow. And they were at the right price point. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I needed to start somewhere. So they were quite small. They fitted the area that I wanted to fit. I was going to be close monitoring. I'm probably about 3.5 feet away from my monitors. So I bought some of these KRKs, these Rockets, and set everything up, started recording in Logic, and lo and behold, I hit a number of problems. Some problems were to do with the shape of the room. Put a little bit of foam up, that helps, moved a few things around. But essentially, I'm close monitoring while I'm recording and mixing, and I'm using headphones. I don't need a live room. I'm not recording drums. There's only me here recording. I have, unfortunately, because I'm up in the roof, I've got 2 windows which leak sound. I've got a road on one side, and I've got houses at the end of the garden on another. So it's not an ideal situation when you're recording with a microphone. And in fact, you may very well hear traffic over this. It'll either sound like a waterfall, or here's a car. So at the moment I'm using a Rode microphone here. So it's okay, but it's just picking up stuff. Nice old motorbike noise there. But that can be unfortunate. When I'm recording vocals, I'm over further that side, and I use a different microphone. And I'm a little bit more boxed in. When I record guitars, I'm using a very directional microphone for the guitar, and it won't pick up any of that. So these are the things that I'm unfortunately I'm not out in the country somewhere where it's quiet, and I can't really soundproof this room. I need natural light, so I'm stuck with glass. Anyway, the point being that recording is very much a compromise. And so you have to make do with, most of us who don't have a professional studio have to make do with the room that we've chosen, and we adapt to that. And for me, actually, it's not a problem. And to be honest with you, if I've got a road noise in my vocal, if my vocals are really isolated, and at the point where I want something very intimate and open, I'm very careful about when I record and how I record that. Other than that, I've got layers of music, and there are ways of getting rid of the sound with the breaks. You know, you can put a gate in there, and carefully cueing. There are ways around it. It doesn't break the bank. So, anyway, recording with the KRKs, I realised that there's a dip in the frequency, that they're made to sound sweeter, and that I was overcompensating for this mid-range dip, and my stuff was coming out harsh and very much in the centre. It wasn't. It just was sort of produced a problem not only in the centre, but because I was over accentuating the sort of centre range that was spreading out to the almost bass and to the highs, it also affected the lows and the highs as well. So I had a complete mismatch, and I couldn't get my ear into balance and compensate for the inadequacy of this monitoring. And I found that out by taking it over to a mate's proper recording studio and putting the speakers next to his monitors. He had a couple of Genelecs, and we could switch between the two while listening to my music. Absolutely amazing, really, really useful to do, and I was very lucky to have that a guy that could do that for me. Very revealing. So the next week I'm bringing the speakers home. They're in a box, and I'll put them up on eBay. I'm selling them. Someone bought them, and I bought a pair of used Genelec 1030s, which are phenomenal. They have just transformed my recording and my mixing. I should have started off with those things, but I'm trying to save money. But what really came to light with putting the Genelecs in was that they're about the same. They go in exactly the same space as the KRKs. They're slightly smaller, not quite as tall, as large as the boxes of the KRK. They're these sort of metal, heavy-duty cast. Rounded boxes, the Genelecs. They've I don't know if they're aluminium. They're quite heavy, real solid. But what I found with the KRKs, that when I created that triangle of being in that sort of head point of the triangle to be able to mix with the KRKs, there was a point, and if it was in front of your head or behind your head, or you moved to the left or the right, you'd get a phasing, and that they had a very defined point where I had to be in the centre of my head. Obviously, you would normally have eye height. The tweeters are going to be sort of eye height. So when you're monitoring, you create this triangle, and your head is at one point, and your speakers are at the 2 points left and right. Well, when I changed to the Genelecs, it was amazing because it gave me a wider sound. I could move very slightly or not be completely centered, and it didn't phase. I was still getting all the tones there. If I moved forward and back, I had more room to sort of move without me suddenly losing the sound that I should be hearing through the speakers. So straight away they widened everything. I didn't have to compensate. I didn't have to stay in one place, which was really uncomfortable with the KRKs. And they gave me back that mid-range. They were a flatter reference speaker. Even with my odd-shaped room and my issues with background noise and all the other stuff, they suddenly upped the quality of what I was hearing and my input and output. So mixing and recording, to me, far more true to what I was putting in was coming out. So that was fantastic. So monitoring, really, at the moment, I'm happy with. I've got it sussed. Now I also monitor using these. They're the K712s, 8 kgs. These are great. They're slightly more rounded, but they give an overall impression of what the speakers give me. They're open, they're not closed backed, they're open, so they bleed a little bit, so and I can hear the environment of the room, so they have a far more open feel to them, but they're great. I'm very happy with these. Can't see any reason why I would want to swap these out for anything. Easy to wear as well. They're quite light, don't hurt the top of your head. You don't get sweaty with them. So yes, I use those for mixing as well as the Genelecs. For recording, just to make sure that I'm isolated and hearing just what comes back through the input channels, I use the good old I think these are DT150s, yeah, which you'll see just about in any studio up and down the land and in different countries. These are the sort of the de rigueur. These are the ones that a lot of broadcasting companies would have used for many years. The nice thing about these DT150s, and in fact probably the whole range, is that everything unscrews and can be repaired or replaced. All the components are replaceable. They're not the cheapest. I had these for many years, brand new, and I had the sort of mock leather sponge ear donuts, shall we call them, and they started a odd breakdown in the sun. I'd left them up somewhere, so I stopped using the studio when I was moving house, and they got some radiation on them, and when I came back to them they were sticky, and not just from my own human greasiness, because I got cleaned. It was that the material, the sort of plastic pretend leather, was being broken down, was starting to break down by the radiation, the sun. So I put an old pair of socks on them, and they've been almost good as new. Now, as I say, these are closed, as opposed to the mixing ones, which are open backs. These are closed. These close off any external sound, and obviously you want that if you're up against a microphone and you're needing to monitor what's recording. You don't want it bleeding out into the microphone as well. So that's why you'd use something like some decent closed-backed recording headphones rather, and these do that job. However, they're quite they can get very hot. You're very closed off, and you can get a bit sweaty in them. And actually, I personally get sort of they rub across the top of my head, and it sort of it gives you like almost like a headache from them. So they're okay for doing the essential stuff that you need. And if you really do need to isolate and listen, pick up what's absolutely coming off the recording and get rid of all the environment, that's where these come in. So they're good, but can be occasionally uncomfortable. Now, what I've started to do, a little revelation to me, and maybe other people have done this for ages, I've started to use these. And most of us have them, these little, well, they're not buds. I can't wear buds. Buds make my ears itch. I can never get the set that fits me properly. But this type of earphone, these are just fairly cheap Sennheisers. But the ones that hang in your ears, they're great because not only can I monitor with them and record with them because they don't bleed, they're so small in ear earphones that I can also mix with them, because the mixing actually kind of gives me a different quality of sound as well. So it's a little bit like using taking a file and listening to your music on a cheap little radio type speaker, or that type of thing where you want to hear what your mix sounds like on a cheaper systems. You don't want to just listen to stuff on reference monitor speakers. You want to listen to it in the real world, the way other people would listen to it. So it makes sense to make an MP3 and to send an MP3 off to a little Bluetooth speaker or something like that. That reveals a lot. It can reveal whether if your bass has disappeared, then maybe there's a little bit in the bass that those small speakers need to pick up just off the sort of bass range and more into the middle. You need a little middle element so that the bass doesn't disappear completely, so it still has a balance. Or that your highs, whatever that is, whether it's a sort of cymbal or percussion, or whether it's a guitar even, or sibilance in a voice, isn't overly accentuated, which it will be in things like this, in these little earphones, or with cheaper speakers, and some of these little players. You will find that accentuates the problem. So those things are really good, that you can come back and then just maybe tweak things on your reference monitors and then go back and listen to it again. And of course, I would have a whole load of professional music that I can just feed in and listen as well and see how that changes. The best mastered and mixed productions of sound and music are the ones where you can play them on anything and you still hear everything pretty much to the quality of that particular unit you're listening to or from. But the fact is that all the structure of the music and the layers of each of the instruments and the where things are forward or back in the mix shouldn't change that much. And that's always the goal, I think, to replicate that so that you get an approximation. Certainly for me, it's an approximation. I'll never get it perfect, and indeed everything sounds different quite naturally on different equipment. The only thing I do not reference any of my music and listen to it in the car. I find that doesn't do any justice to my ability to assess it. I've for many years have suffered from tinnitus, and it's odd. It sort of really became noticeable once I stopped playing in a band, playing live music. So I find that listening to music, say in a car stereo, is just pointless. A box in a box, listening to music in a box, in it while you're in a box. The things that you're used to are the things that you should really use as references. I've got a Bluetooth speaker, a cheap one that I use. I put my music on a card there and just listen to it, and that's great because that's sort of cheap but good enough for me to better hear whether things are coming through. That's been very useful. What else have we got? Oh, there are just a number of things. I also switch. I've got a gain app which I switch into mono, and I like listening to early mixes in mono because then it gets rid of all the width issues, and it's everything stacked and layered in front in the center. And I think if you can sort of start off creating a balance and clarity in mono, that is almost like a good starting point, and then switch it off and go back into stereo. Then you're using effects which actually separate as well, so separate that way, and then I'm separating that way, and that is both placement, frequency and effects, whether effect is splitting things from side to side or things are moving and separating items out, or you've doubled up things and you're just towing them in or out slightly to across the left and right fields. All that stuff, you're just making it up, don't you? Anyway, that's they are the things that I use that have been really useful, and I was hoping that for the last few minutes that light would go back on, but it appears not. Anyway, I am in darkness in the centre, and I think we'll end it there before the light goes out either side and we get a storm. So there we go, quick video. You see, right at the end, I'll say goodbye now, and that was fortuitous, wasn't it? We'll catch you soon. Have a good day. I hope your lights work, because mine aren't.